right, we are good to go here on YouTube. The gram is up, and so is Facebook, man. So let's run it back from the top.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Salute to Knicks Nation on this Knicksmas Eve. Another edition of KFTV's Game of the Week preview presented by Underdog Fantasy. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or use the Underdog Fantasy app using our code KFTV for up to $1,000 in bonus cash plus a free pick. This episode is a special edition Knicksmas episode because the Knicks will tip off the NBA's Christmas Day slate as they usually do, with a new opponent coming into town, and that is a sophomore sensation, Victor Wembanyama, Wemby Mania, and the San Antonio Spurs coming into town, looking for a bounce-back win, man. And we're going to talk about this game with a friend of the program, man. Returning to the show, he is the lead creator for the Vic and Roll Substack. He's our guy, Noah Magaro George, checking in. So lock in. Hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channels. This is going to be a good one, man. Let's go. All right, man. Noah, how you feeling, man?
I'm good. I mean, tough loss last night, but hey,
yeah.
Spurs are playing on Christmas, and it feels like I don't know the exact time, but it feels like it's been a decade. So I'm excited to see them. It means they're relevant again to some degree, so I'm excited for that. Yeah. Christmas Day basketball doesn't get better than that.
I couldn't tell you the last time I remember like a Spurs Christmas Day game, you know, maybe during the Duncan years, maybe. I don't remember last time Spurs had that.
Yeah, probably around there. Maybe with the Kawhi Spurs, it's been too long. But I'm happy to see them back, man. It's a special thing not only to play on Christmas, but to go to Madison Square Garden, play the Knicks on Christmas. That's a historic place. It's a good team. It's a good litmus test for the Spurs team that's been better than I think people thought they were going to be. So I'm excited to see what's going to go down. I think this is going to be a really good matchup.
As you look at this Knicks team, the last time you saw them was when Jalen Brunson dropped to 60 points, but Wemby and the squad got the last laugh. What's been your impressions of this Knicks team with Karl Anthony Towns and OG and Mikal Bridges here?
I think this team looks better than they did a year ago. And that's nothing against Julius Randle. Julius Randle was a really, really solid player, all-NBA player, all-star player, but I think someone like Karl Anthony Towns just made more sense for this Knicks team. And they've looked better. The spacing has been better. The offense seems to be a little bit smoother. Of course, they're missing, Mitchell Robinson. I'm not sure when he's going to get back, but you look at this team and you look at them long-term for the rest of the season, I think they're one of those teams that could make a deep playoff push. So for me, this is, again, a great litmus test for the Spurs to say, like, can we beat a team near full strength that is competing for something, right? It's not like they're playing a lottery team here. This is a team that wants to win. This is a team that's trying to get seeding in the playoffs. It's not a lottery team. It's not the Blazers. It's not the Hawks. It's not the Wizards. So I'm excited for that matchup because it's going to be a good test for the Spurs.
No question. And as you said, not necessarily a knock on Julius Randle because he certainly deserves a lot of credit for, enduring some tough years and some good years with this Knicks team. 3-time All-Star on the Tom Thibodeau with the Knicks. So he certainly had some good moments and some tough ones as well. And you're kind of seeing in the rumblings out of Minnesota some of the same criticisms. And so, with Karl Anthony Towns being here, this Knicks team has gotten more efficient. They've gotten smarter. And they just have a much better cohesion offensively. Now you're seeing the ball movement, their passing abilities off the charts. They're more connected offensively, and which is why they're one of the top offenses in the league. And there's no question Karl Anthony Towns has been the linchpin there. And playing at an MVP level, I legitimately do think, and even when you go on like NBA.com and you see their MVP ladders, have him at 5th. I'm buying into it, man. I think he's been that good for this team.
Yeah, he's a special player. I think we always knew he was going to be special when he was in Minnesota coming up. And then when he was kind of reaching his prime in Minnesota, this is a guy who he spreads the floor. And I know he kind of got some flack a few years ago for saying I'm the greatest, shooting big man in NBA history. And people are going, well, what about Dirk? And I get it. Dirk, Hall of Famer, can't take nothing away from him. But Karl Anthony Towns, the volume's higher, the three-point percentage is higher, the versatility in terms of he's not just catching it and shooting, he's pulling up, he can run off screens, right? He's got a lot of shot versatility, he can do it on and off ball. So I think Karl Anthony Towns is a highly underrated player, and he was a massive pickup for this Knicks team. He just makes everything work a little bit smoother. You don't have so many guys occupying the same space, crowding the paint, and he's a guy who can do it inside, he can do it outside, he can play make off the dribble. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people are talking about him as an MVP candidate, but he certainly has played at maybe the best rate or level of his career, and it's been really exciting to see him next to Jalen Brunson, a guy who we know since he's joined the Knicks has been an all-NBA level point guard.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of Brunson, like you said, playing at an all-NBA level, when he was with Dallas, you saw him a lot in the Spurs, Mavericks matchups. You know, what have you made of Brunson's evolution over those years?
It's been really cool because I live in Dallas, so I had an opportunity to go to the games where they played the San Antonio Spurs, get credentialed, and watch those games in person. And Jalen Brunson was one of those guys that you're like, man, he looks pretty good off the bench. You wonder what he can do with more opportunity. Then it comes to that playoff series where Luka's down. They needed him to step up big. I believe they were playing the Jazz at the time, and then you see Jalen Brunson, 40 bomb, 38 points. And then Luka comes back, they win, they make it to the Western Conference Finals, and it's like, this guy deserves an opportunity. And he got it with the Knicks. He showed it wasn't just a fluke in the playoffs. He didn't just get hot at the right time because he's continued that sort of production. And again, like you mentioned at the beginning of this talk, is he's a guy who dropped 60 on the Spurs, right? Like not everybody's dropping 60 every game. And obviously it's not every game, but to have the capability to do that, period, it is a special player. So watching him, he has been a guy who really has just transformed himself from that second rounder unheralded prospect to, again, all NBA level point guard. And that's not anything to laugh at. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, he's the goods, man. And, you know, just watching him in his bag, especially offensively, it's been a pleasure to watch over the years. But now it's a bit of a shift in role where he doesn't just have to be the lead gunner every night, right? He doesn't have to be the guy that we saw drop 60 on the Spurs, but he's still capable of doing it. But now he has other guys, like case in point, you know, in Monday night's win over the Raptors, he didn't have a great game, but you had 62 points combined between Karl Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby. Mikal Bridges shooting the ball well. You know, the bench has played well at least last night. So, you know, now he's got a supporting cast that can help him out a little bit. So it's refreshing.
It is really refreshing to see somebody have that opportunity and then now have the supporting cast to back it up so that he does not have to be the guy every night. And I think you look at the Spurs team and Wemby's still kind of like not doing it by himself, because that's not fair. He's got teammates, he's got good players on this team, but certainly not the same supporting cast that the Knicks have. You know, if Cat's not hot, maybe Jalen's hot. If Jalen's not hot, maybe it's Mikal Bridges. If Bridges is not hot, it could be OG Anunoby. Or if they're all feeling it in one game, oh my God, well, it makes the game so much easier for everybody else. So it's really cool to see that. It gives you so much optionality, it gives you scheme versatility, and then when guys get going, it just makes the game easier for those role players.
And talking about the team that you cover, the San Antonio Spurs, let's talk about Wemby, man, because, you know, there was a lot of expectations for him in this second year. Could he be on that MVP ladder, all defense, defensive player of the year? I mean, in his last 10 right now, he's at 27.5 points per game, 9.8 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 4.8 blocks, and by the way, damn near shooting 50% from the field and 40 from three. Close to it. Your biggest impressions of Wemby in year two right now?
Biggest impressions of Wemby in year two of he's taken the leap. Last year, I think we knew he was going to be a special defensive prospect. We knew he was a guy who could be all generational sort of defender, rim protector, switchable on the perimeter. But I don't know that we knew what he could be offensively. Like, I think we saw some flashes. He had a 40-point game against the Knicks, and it's like, you know, that's a nice game, but the offensive consistency, the efficiency wasn't there. And so you start wondering, like, is this a guy who is probably a number two offensively, but the best player on your team because of what he does on the defensive end? Does he need somebody to come in and be that number one offensive option, get him to his looks, get him to his spots? And this season, he's turned it up a notch. He's taken a lot of ball handling responsibilities. He's running inverted pick and rolls. He's shooting off the dribble. They're getting him to his spots at the elbow, near the nail. And he's been super efficient. Like, the beginning of the season, there was a lot of criticism, national criticism, local criticism. Why is this big guy shooting all these threes? But without the context, I think that just doesn't do him any service, right? It's a disservice not to add the context. Teams are walling up now like they're playing Shaq, like they're playing Giannis, right? They're not just letting him get near the basket. So he had to find a solution, and that solution was three-point shooting. And he started the year cold, but he has been on a tear recently. As you mentioned, he's shooting nearly 40% from three, but the volume, it's nearly 11 per game over the last 20 games. And he's nearly matched Steph Curry's efficiency and volume over that 20-game stretch. So I'm not saying he's Steph Curry, but you look at the volume, you look at the efficiency, and you go, wow, that guy's putting up Steph Curry level numbers as a three-point shooter, and he's a rim protector, and he's a rim runner, and he can get to his spot at the elbows, mid-range. And you start thinking, man, this is a guy who's not a number two. This looks like a bona fide number one. So that's been my biggest impression, is that Wemby has come back this season, add a little strength, add a little bit more skill, tighten up the ball handling, and he looks like a guy who can be your best player offensively on a championship contender one day.
He's talked about in his second year having more freedom in the offense. And as you mentioned, the three-point volume. Last year, only 30% of his shots came from three. This year, he's up at 47%, dialing it back a little bit from the rim, and he's taking it. Is that more just his decision-making in the offense? Is that more of a calculated, sets or designs by Pop and his coaching staff? What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is teams have kind of responded to what they know Wembanyama's good at. Last season, he shot about 75% at the rim, which was near the top in the NBA, and also the volume was really high. And so teams are going, this is a 7'3" guy. He's a floor spacer as far as vertical spacing, like above the rim. He's a lob threat. He's a guy who, once he's near the basket, there's not a lot you can do but foul him because he's going to finish. So now they're making a concerted effort as a defender, as defensive schemes from the opponents. They're trying to push him out, right? They want to get him off his spot early. We're not letting him post up near the basket. We're going to send extra help. We're going to send double teams. We're not letting him get near the basket. And so for me, a little bit is, like the Spurs realize he also is a perimeter player. And that's something Pop said before, and he's doing better. But before he had his stroke, he was telling people, hey, this is not a center. This is not a big man. He is a wing. This is a wing player. This is a perimeter player. And so just letting him have the freedom to do that, I think a lot of it is the Spurs intentionally going, hey, this is a wing. We're going to let him operate on the perimeter. But another a large part of it is those defenses really, hey, he's so good at the rim, we need to stop him from getting there in the first place. We don't want to give that up. We would rather him shoot threes. So a little bit of both, but those are the two biggest factors for me.
And that's why, the matchups really intrigue me, especially in this game tomorrow, because I don't know if it's Karl Anthony Towns that draws that assignment first. Is it OG Anunoby? And maybe you park Towns somewhere, maybe on a Sohan or somewhere there. I'm wondering how they do this, because they got Wemby moving like he's Kevin Durant out there. And for Towns, who isn't, the most agile defensively, he'll give it a good effort. But I wonder that, especially with his tendency to foul and get into foul trouble. What do you think about that matchup standpoint?
Yeah, well, now that the Spurs are 100% healthy and they're very committed to Sohan starting, one of the drawbacks to Sohan, and he's a fantastic player in his own right, but one of the drawbacks is he just doesn't shoot. He doesn't space the floor. And so what teams have done recently, you look at the Sixers game last night, rather than putting Joel Embiid on Victor Wembanyama, they say, okay, Kelly Oubre, you're on Victor Wembanyama. Embiid, go guard Sohan, because Sohan doesn't need to be guarded on the perimeter. You could stick him out there, but nobody's fooled by that. So now you can let Joel Embiid sag off. You can have someone who can get under Wembanyama's dribble, because as good as he is for a ball handler at 7'3", he's certainly no Kyrie Irving. He's certainly no Jalen Brunson. He's certainly no De'Aaron Fox in that right? He still does not have a tight handle quite like a point guard. So when you're able to stick a bigger wing on him, those guys are still, pretty good at getting under his dribble. And a lot of those guys, like the Dylan Brooks types, the Jalen McDaniels, they're able to push him off of his spots when he's posting up at the elbow, force that catch close to the perimeter, and now you force him to operate from the perimeter. So what I would expect from the Knicks right off the bat is you're going to see OJ Anunoby out there on him from the get-go. I don't expect Karl Anthony Towns, and maybe they have a different plan than I would go with, but if I'm the Knicks, I'm sticking OG on Wembanyama from the second this game tips off.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And then when you think about the Spurs supporting cast, it was a big, emphasis this past offseason. They had the cap space to go out there and get some more talent from Wembanyama. Obviously, on this rebuild, they want to put these supporting pieces around him. They had Harrison Barnes. They go out there, they get Chris Paul. What have you made of this unit here, and then even the drafting of Stephon Castle?
Yeah, it's been a weird year because the Spurs had their first game where everybody was available for them. All of their normal starters, their starting lineup that they told us at Media Day, like this is the lineup that we envision for the beginning of the season. Fortunately, injuries have taken that away, so we haven't gotten a big sample size of it. But now that we have the Harrison Barnes, Chris Paul, Wembanyama, Sohan, and Vassell lineups, I've been impressed with it. And I've been really impressed with Chris Paul. Now, he's not a guy who is in his prime anymore. He's no longer peak Chris Paul, but what he is able to do, he's able to play with pace, he's able to get to his spots, he's able to use his eyes to manipulate defenders and get guys open, and I've been very impressed with his connection with Wembanyama, and I've also been impressed with him really being able to take a step back and go, hey, I don't need the ball in my hands all the time. In fact, I'm going to be the guy setting screens in these inverted pick and rolls where he's the screener and Wembanyama's the ball handler. And now Chris Paul's rolling and he's making those reads off the short roll. So I've been impressed with him. Harrison Barnes, he's been hot and cold. I think that's kind of how he's been the last couple of years, even with Sacramento. But, the Spurs, even before Pop went down, Pop was pretty committed to giving Harrison Barnes a big role. He was a big fan of his leadership. He's a big fan of the spacing he has. And he also likes that you can kind of work him on some post-ups here and there. So I haven't been that impressed with Harrison Barnes outside of that one sort of anomaly week where he won Western Conference Player of the Week. But he's definitely important to the spacing. If it were up to me, and it's not, but if it was up to me, I would love to see maybe Julian Champagnie stuck back into the starting lineup because he really did so well as a starter before everybody got healthy. But really interesting roster. Castle's been interesting. He's not been the most efficient, but he has those big game moments where he's come up in the clutch. He's had a couple of big games where it's like, wow, you could see him being that lead ball handler for the future.
I like his game.
He's got a long way to go. He's got a long way to go. Local media's talked to him about that rookie wall he's seemingly hit. Last night he had a good game, but then you saw Mitch Johnson going, hey, he's a rook. I don't know that we really trust him in the clutch. And he didn't play when it was close at the end of the game. So it's tough to make, something solid of this roster, get a good grip of it. But as we get more opportunities to see this team for game after game after game, I think we'll get a better idea of what everybody's role is going to look like.
Well, when you look at this five matchup-wise, is it safe to assume Wemby will take that Towns assignment? Who do you think they stick on Towns here?
I think it's probably going to be Victor Wembanyama. The only time they ever really switch him off of big men is if they're really like bullying him quite a bit. Like, for example, last season when he was a rookie, they played Joel Embiid. He had that 72-point game where Wembanyama got the assignment at the beginning, but then once he got scored on again and again and again, the physicality, drawing fouls, it's like, all right, we're gonna try something else. So they moved Sohan to him, then they tried it even with Julian Champagnie for a little bit. So unless Karl Anthony Towns is really taking Wembanyama to town in the post and punishing him physically, I expect it to be Wembanyama on Towns for most of the game.
I want to see Towns take it to him physically. That's what I want to see out the gates. Like, will the Knicks be intimidated by his paint presence, or will they be in attack mode, whether it's Karl Anthony Towns or Jalen Brunson or especially Josh Hart? Like, will they be ready for that, or are they going to just, settle for tough shots and jumpers? Spurs right now 10th in opponents' points in the paint. They're about middle of the pack in terms of their rim protection, their rim defense. So I want to see if Towns is going to get more physical with Wemby or if he's going to stay out there on the perimeter.
Yeah, and I think one thing to really keep an eye on, we talked about it with Sohan, where he doesn't really shoot. He's a reluctant shooter. He's not a great shooter. And you're able to stick a wing and put Wembanyama elsewhere so that he can help off and he can protect the rim as a help defender. One thing that I kind of am curious about, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is Josh Hart. He's had a better year shooting this season, but he's not really a volume shooter. And in the past couple of matchups, what the Spurs had done when it was Isaiah Hardenstein and Mitchell Robinson in the starting lineup previously for them last season was they actually did a similar thing with Josh Hart where they stuck Wembanyama on Josh Hart and they let Sohan take those big man matchups so that Wembanyama did not have to worry about guarding the center. So that's something that I'm curious about because Josh Hart, again, he's had a better year shooting, but he's certainly not a high volume shooter.
Yeah, not high volume, but definitely stepping into his shots more confidently. That's been one of like his knocks is like sometimes he gets caught in between, like, should I take this? Or, he gets a little bit hesitant. But this year, he's been stepping right into it and knocking him down with confidence. And so if he draws that Wemby assignment, again, going to be interesting to see where his mindset is. Is it attack mode? Is he going to second guess shooting? Because Wemby's one of those guys that'll send you three-pointer into the third row that quickly. So, that's going to be interesting. But, also with Josh Hart, what I love about him is his secondary playmaking skills in the half court. It'll allow the Knicks to play Jalen Brunson off ball if they need to. Transition. That's where Josh Hart gets his money. Grab the rebound, and he's a one-man fast break. You know, his ability to play in the short roll, or if a team puts 2 on the ball, he's playing that middle spot. Boom, you have the advantage there. He's finding his wings. And so I just love his overall versatility that he brings to this Knicks team, man. He's a vital piece to this puzzle.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Josh Hart has been a really awesome player to watch evolve, going from the Lakers, then to the Blazers, and I think he was the Pelicans for a minute, and now he's with the Knicks, and I think he's really hit his stride with the Knicks, found out who he is as a player, how they can optimize him, how he can optimize his own skill set. And I think, you know, you look at these two teams, and there's a lot of similarities. You've got a guy who, Karl Anthony Towns, who can stretch the floor, but he can put it on the floor also. He can also play make a little bit off the dribble. Wembanyama can do that. You got a guy like Sohan who he can play make as a secondary playmaker a little bit. He can put the ball on the floor, rebound and run in transition as the guy who's leading the break. Like Josh Hart can do that a little bit. You got a guy like Devin Vassell, long, can shoot threes, can create for himself a little bit, but also great catch and shooter. And I think, wow, that sounds a lot like Mikal Bridges, right? I think the only one, you know, 1-to-1 matchup that's not a lot of similarities there is Chris Paul and Jalen Brunson, just because of where they are at this stage in their career. But there are certainly a lot of parallels between the personnel on these rosters.
CP the Franchise talking to my guy Noah Magaro George, who covers the San Antonio Spurs for the Vic and Roll Substack. Make sure you guys are tapping in with him on Twitter as well as his Substack. Salute to everybody in the chat, man. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram. Happy Knicksmas Eve to everybody. We are breaking this game down. 12 o'clock tip-off between the Knicks and the Spurs, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing Wemby come to town. I saw him when he came to town last year. I obviously had to get tickets for that. Summer League. I was at Summer League when he made his debut. That was an absolute vibe. And so, the Wemby journey has been very intriguing to me. On the guard matchup, you spoke about Chris Paul. Throughout this season, the opposing defenses have typically put the wings on Jalen Brunson. So is that going to be, could that be Sohan? Could that be Devin Vassell? What do you think there? How do you think they match up with JB?
It could be Jeremy Sohan. I think one of the things that has been sort of a limiting factor, whereas last year, Trey Jones, a really good point of attack defender, so they go, okay, we'll let him take the point guard matchups unless somebody's really cooking him, which didn't happen that often. But Chris Paul's really struggled this season. He's got one of the worst defensive field goal percentages in the league. He's letting guys shoot about 54% against him as a primary defender. That would put him, you know, bottom 5 in the league. And he isn't what he used to be. He's still got the quick hands. He can still, you know, come up with deflections, come up with steals if you're loose with the handle, but he just has trouble staying in front of guys. And so you look at a guy like Jalen Brunson, maybe not the quickest guy, but he's so shifty. He knows how to play with pace. I don't know if they leave a guy like Chris Paul in him, but the problem with Chris Paul is you can't really stick him anywhere else.
Right.
He's 6 feet tall. You're not going to put him on Mikal Bridges. You're not going to put him on Josh Hart. You're not going to put him on OG. You're not going to put him on Cat. He's not particularly switchable, right? So you're limited with what you can do when CP3's on the court. And, you know, no disrespect to him, but I do largely think they're probably going to put him on Jalen Brunson and live with the results, because if you switch him on to anyone else, that again, he's kind of the guy who defenses have attacked this season. And the Spurs have lived with it because you've got Wembanyama on that back line as the final line of defense, and they're willing to live with that.
Yeah. And right now, opposing point guards averaging about 23.7 points per game on the Spurs, and so that's an area I think where the Knicks can take advantage. Jalen Brunson didn't have a great shooting night in the Knicks win over the Raptors, and so typically he has those bounce-back games where he has that pep in his step. He's got the shooter's bounce, and so we'll see what happens there on Christmas Day with Brunson. How about the battle of the benches here? What do you think? How do you see that playing out?
Well, see, now that I think that the Spurs are 100% healthy, everybody's going to be available for tomorrow's game, I think the Spurs actually have a lot better depth than most people give them credit for, just because we hadn't seen it. They'd been banged up all season, but now you look at their bench. Trey Jones, who'd been a starter in this league for a few years, really good ball handler, a guy who can push it in transition, a guy who can collapse a defense and kick it out, doesn't commit a lot of turnovers. Then you've got Julian Champagnie, who's coming off of your bench as well, been one of the best three-point shooters on this team, high volume, has some shot versatility, is not a guy who just stands still. He can run off screens, he's off pin downs. off of staggers. Like he's got some real versatility. I like him, and he's a good two-way player. I really like Stephon Castle. He was fantastic as a starter. Now he's been moved to the bench. And the Spurs have finally, and I say this as respectfully as I can, but finally moved on from this idea that they have to play Zach Collins. And Charles Bassey has been really awesome as a rim runner, as a vertical floor spacer, as a guy who's protecting the rim at a really, really nice level. And so you got all these guys here who they're serviceable players. They're not just guys who you play because they're on your roster and you have no other choice. They're players who would probably be getting minutes in other scenarios as well. So I really think the Spurs have an advantage in their second unit, but this is also a team that's been very inconsistent. And so if these guys aren't knocking down their shots, the Spurs aren't going to have a lot of success probably.
Yeah, and for the Knicks, it's been the opposite. They're on a 4-game winning streak. They did struggle with consistency in the first 2 months. This month in December, they've been playing very well, and their bench has been coming along. You had Cam Payne with 19 points in the win over the Raptors. You know him as a member of the Phoenix Suns. He'll let it fly any chance he gets. Deuce McBride also playing well, and then we'll see what happens there from that front court matchup where it's Precious Achiuwa. It's likely Jericho Sims. Those guys kind of taking on Champagnie as well as Bassey. And Sims has done a good job on the boards as well as some of his rim protection as well. And so he's gained more minutes in that rotation for Tom Thibodeau. But, overall, this Knicks second unit, they don't log much minutes. They're last in the league in terms of rotation minutes. So we'll see. You could see a 40-minute outing from multiple Knicks starters, as typically is the case with Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, I was about to say Tom Thibodeau's famous for running, the wheels off of his starters. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw those starters getting a lot of minutes, especially on this nationally televised Christmas Day game. The only thing I can add here is Keldon Johnson, the guy who I did not mention.
Yeah.
He can very much be an X factor. Now, he is a guy who is incredibly inconsistent, but when he's on, he's on. We saw him make 6 3-pointers against the Lakers. He had about 30 points in that game, and he was the difference maker for San Antonio winning that game against the Lakers a month back. Now, we also have seen him come out and go 1 of 8, 1 of 7, 1 of 6. He's not knocking down threes. He's forcing stuff at the rim. He's missing reads. And so Keldon Johnson can be that double-edged sword where when he's on, man, he's the X factor for you. But when he's off, it's like, man, pass the ball. Do something other than drive into traffic and then lose the ball. Like, he's an X factor for me, but he's so hot and cold. You're not sure what you're going to get from him, but when he's on, he can absolutely be the difference maker that helps you get that dub.
I feel like he was a player, especially when he made that Olympic team. Which year was that? Was that Redeem team that he was on? He was on USA Basketball.
Yep.
I feel like he was a guy that, many were kind of putting on that trajectory, like, he's going to take that next step. And then now he's finding himself on the bench with the San Antonio team. I mean, what have you made of his career over the last couple of years?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've never really been a Keldon Johnson guy. I mean, between the film and also the advanced numbers, the advanced numbers don't like Keldon Johnson. And if you're watching basketball, you know what you're watching. He's a tough player. He drives into traffic. He turns the ball over at a fairly high rate. He's not a guy who has a mid-range game. He's not a guy who has a float game. So he's primarily just a guy who finishes directly at the rim, or it's catch and shoot threes. You can't run him off screens. He's not a guy who's really catch and shooting in transition. He's really mostly a standstill guy and a slasher. And so if you can't make plays and you're a slasher, that's tough, because if there's no open, lane to the rim, if you're met with opposition there and you're not willing to pass it, or you don't have the vision to pass it, now you're taking a bad shot. And now maybe you're falling on the ground, maybe you're trying to get a foul, maybe you've turned the ball over, and now it's a tilted floor and your team is running a 4-on-3, and you're on the wrong side of that. So for me, Keldon Johnson is a tough player offensively to really like, and he really hasn't matured as far as that part of his game. Like, occasionally he will make a nice read. Everybody does. These are all NBA players, but he hasn't done it on a consistent basis. And defensively, unfortunately, he's right there with Chris Paul. He's allowing guys to shoot a little over 53% as a primary defender. He's a step slow. He's too slow to guard guards, but he's too small to guard wings and big men. And then he's a ball watcher. Defensively, he's a ball watcher. He gets beat backdoor maybe once or twice a game. So for me, never been a big Keldon Johnson guy. Never really understood why people put him on that pedestal, but he's one of those guys who, at the time, he was the most promising young guy on the Spurs roster that was devoid of a lot of talent. Pop was the head coach of Team USA. He brought him along for the ride. But, I don't think that was really indicative of what his trajectory was going to be. I think he had the luxury of playing for Pop, and he had the luxury of being invited along. But to me, he never was a guy who was going to be a star or an all-star, or really even a high-level starter. To me, he was always going to be a guy who can probably be a really solid sixth man if he cleans up some stuff. And unfortunately, this year, efficiency is down, turnovers are up, assists are down. It's hard to buy into what he's selling.
There it is, man. Salute to everybody in the chat. Once again, hit that thumbs up button for your boy, CP the Franchise. And I got my guy, Noah Magaro George, on the other side. Remember to support our sponsor, man. This show is brought to you guys by Underdog Fantasy. You use the Underdog Fantasy app or go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use our code KFTV and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash plus a free pick. I'm going to go over the Underdog Fantasy plays of the game in just a little bit. I won some cash last night on the Knicks versus Raptors game. I'll show you that as well. And with Underdog Fantasy, you pick between 2 to 8 players, and all you're going to do is predict whether or not that player is going to go higher or lower than a given stat category that Underdog Fantasy has laid out. You have a number of games tomorrow on Christmas Day, not just NBA, but now you have NFL to choose from. So 2 to 8 players, higher or lower, and you can win up to 325 times your money. The more you play, the more you can win. Use our code KFTV for up to $1,000 in bonus cash plus a free pick. All right, Noah, so another thing before we get to our predictions of the game, trade deadline. I know from the Knicks perspective, all eyes are on what they may do at the trade deadline. Are they going to go get a front court piece? Will they add to their rotation and to their bench, bring in some much needed reinforcements? But for you guys, you're hearing some bigger names. De'Aaron Fox, maybe. What do you think? Where do you think the Spurs go sitting in 9th place right now in the West?
Yeah, kind of the mindset. They're probably going to write it out. One of the big things that, and even like some local reporters have asked after recent games, what is on our mind? Are you trying to improve this team? Whatnot, that sort of stuff. The Spurs are very big on, and they say it all the time, we don't want to skip steps. We're not interested in skipping steps. And I think it's really important to look at the context of a lot of these reports. Like people, they want to tweet it out really quick. It's like, hey, De'Aaron Fox may come to the Spurs, but you look deeper into it, you read the reports, and, the actual, wording of things is like the Spurs would be interested in De'Aaron Fox should he ever become available. And you look at the stuff from De'Aaron Fox's side, and it's like he would be interested in a trade if this team is not where he expects them to be. But to be 100% honest with you, you look at a guy like De'Aaron Fox, he'll be eligible if he makes an All-NBA team this year for one of those massive Supermax contracts, and he would be paid so much more than San Antonio could ever pay him. So I would fully expect him to be fine, standing pat, playing out this season with Sacramento, and he's the face of the Kings. I don't think they're interested in moving him quite yet either. So when I look at San Antonio, they have a lot of guys that they're still trying to learn what they can be. They're not quite sure who Sohan is. They're not quite sure who Castle is. I don't even think they're 100% quite sure if Devin Vassell can be that number 2 or number 3 guy. And so going after a guy like Fox when you're in 9th place, you're not really a contender. I think it just muddies the water for you a little bit. Like, figure out who you are right now, and then you still have 23 first and second round picks in the next 7 years. Use that ammo once you get a better idea of what the bigger picture is. So I think they'll probably end up doing nothing. And that's the boring answer, but I think that's probably what's going to happen. Yeah,
fair enough, man. I'm not so sure. It's hard to see how motivated Sacramento is to really trade Fox. Are they just kind of kicking the tires? Obviously, he doesn't have the contract extension, so it's certainly something to watch. And the Kings don't really strike me as a team that's really going to turn the corner anytime soon with that Fox and Sabonis combination. They did try to get DeMar DeRozan, but I didn't really think too highly of that move either. Keegan Murray hasn't really ascended to a level that, you would want in terms of moving like a big 3, so to speak, especially in a crowded West. So they kind of seem like they're a bit stuck in the mud. We'll have to be seeing where they go there. All right, so back to this game, man. Christmas Day tilt, 12 o'clock. What do you think, man? Game prediction. Where are you going, man?
Yeah, I try not to be a homer, but Victor Wembanyama has absolutely loved the spotlight. He has played well in these nationally televised games. And the one thing that I can say is don't poke the bear, right? Like Wembanyama, when he has been, pushed over, bullied, somebody says something to him, it gets him in another gear and he takes it to another level. And it's not like he sees red and he can't make good decisions. It's like, all right, I'm ready for this. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's take it to another level. And it hyper focuses him. Like even in that Hawks game, we saw he got dunked on by DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah.
Double tech. And then from that point on, the Hawks were 1 of 8 from the field through the end of the fourth quarter to overtime. And Wembanyama had 10 straight points. Spurs put him away. And so I think Wembanyama wanting to be on this big stage, you give him any reason to have any extra motivation, whether that's Cat, whether that's OG, whether that's anyone, right? I think he's going to have a massive game. He doesn't need the extra motivation, but if he gets it, it's a massive game. So I think the Spurs have a good chance to walk away with the win. But again, that's maybe a little bit of me being a homer here.
Hey, all good, man. Nothing wrong with that. And you know what? I do love, first of all, I love his humility, but I do love that he's not backing down from the challenge, especially in his second year. Like, as he said, he's got more freedom in the offense. He's asserting himself. I'm sure that Olympics experience really, he showed that emotion, wore that heart on his sleeve, how much that meant to him. And so I think his competitive energy is very admirable. And I like that as just an overall fan of the game. I got to go with the hot hand, man. I got to go with the hot hand, and that is his opponent on the other side. I got to go with Karl-Anthony Towns, man. Right now, he is on a heater, coming off of a quiet 31-10 double-double against the San Antonio Spurs. I just think Karl-Anthony Towns is in his bag, in his arsenal right now, just being able to get it done from three, from inside, being able to rebound the ball. And I think he's also going to take that Wemby challenge on as that marquee matchup. Like, listen, man, I can't have this kid coming in here to the Garden and upstaging me. Additionally, I think the Knicks offense right now is just clicking way too well. Where, again, case in point, last night, they could have afforded an off night from Jalen Brunson because OG Anunoby broke out of his slump. Mikal Bridges has been red hot. Josh Hart can get you double-digit points and go across the stat sheet in terms of impacting the game. I think this Knicks team is hot where if they just come out and get their shots down. Now, midday, matinee show, we'll see how that impacts both teams in terms of shooting. But I just think this Knicks team, having won 4 straight, I'm going to continue to ride the hot hand, man. I think the Knicks will get this one. I'll go 125. 115.
I like it. It's a close game, and I could see it. I could absolutely see the Knicks winning this one. And the other thing with Cat is he's got some history with San Antonio. He had a 60-burger like a year or two ago against San Antonio. He knows their scheme. He seems to just have their number, right? Like he has played so well against them the last couple of years. So, hey, maybe he sees a familiar opponent. That gives you some confidence. He's already playing well. He's got the motivation. I could see it. But I do think regardless of who wins, it's going to be a competitive game. And that's what I'm hoping for.
No question about it. One thing I did want to ask you about the Spurs is that their improvement in the clutch this year. Wow. Right? They're about top 5 in clutch. I think they're outscoring opponents by like 18 points per 100 in crunch time. What do you attribute that to in terms of their growth from year over year?
Yeah, salute to Chris Paul. Chris Paul has really done a good job of, so to speak, like organizing the troops, keeping guys calm, level-headed, organizing the offense. He has been really fantastic, and like he's kind of turned back the clock. He's only averaging about 9.5 or 9.6 points per game, but in the clutch, he's come up with some massive mid-range jumpers, with some massive three-point jumpers, and it's not like he's open on these. He's taken these with guys draped over him, and then he's also shown a really, really nice connection with Wembanyama in the clutch, getting the ball to him in the spots, running those little angle pick and rolls with him. Like, he has been so good for them, and Wembanyama has been fantastic in the clutch too. So, credit to both of them, but I think more than anything, there's just been a night and day difference between, guys like Keldon and Devin and Trey Jones, who were kind of leading the charge in the clutch, to now it's Chris Paul, the ball's in his hands. Let's slow it down. I've been here before. This is not my first rodeo. So, credit to Chris Paul. He's been fantastic for them in the clutch.
Oh, there it is, man. Well, listen, man, I'm looking forward to a good game tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Much success to you, and let's definitely do this again, man. I appreciate your contributions. I follow you on Twitter. I follow your film breakdowns as well. You do a great job there, and make sure you guys at home are following our guy, Noah Magaro George, and the Vic and Roll podcast. Oh, well, Substack, rather. Substack. Vic and Roll Substack.
Yeah, appreciate you. I always love talking Spurs basketball. I'm always happy to talk with people who know basketball. So I had a great time. Again, thank you so much for bringing me on. This was a blast.
Absolutely. All right, that was our guy, Noah Magaro George. Salute to everybody in the chat once again, man. Hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. Salute to everybody, man. CP the franchise here. What do you guys think about this game tomorrow, man? What are some of your predictions? I think the Knicks should be all right, man. I really like where this team is playing right now. I love the way that they are playing, the role that they are on. And we ain't afraid of Wemby, man. I think the Knicks go out there and get the job done. What do you guys think? Salute to everybody in the chat, man, wherever you guys are watching from. My YouTube family, salute to you. My Instagram family, salute to you. And we locking in here, man. I'm going to, a couple more minutes, I want to go through my underdog picks. Because the boy came up on some bread yesterday at the Knicks game. I'm to show you what I went in on and what I'm going to go in on for tomorrow's game. But shout out to Noah, man. Very knowledgeable Spurs creator and analyst, rather. So shout out to him. Shout out to Firestarter in the chat. I see my franchise channel members, Gregory Weiner, Lee Bloxham. Lee, cheers to my guys across the pond. Mr. Duns, I see you. Who else we got in here? Brawman, let's go. Let's get to it. Yeah, man, I'm going to, after this, I got to get in the kitchen to get my chef hat on. You know what I mean? Cooking with franchise. I'm going to do a little, Christmas Eve, do my rendition of the Feast of the Seven Fishes, if you will, for my Italians in the chat. Yeah, we got a big spread coming through. My family's coming through around 6 o'clock, so we're going to get the Christmas party started. Okay, but either way, let me get my underdog stuff on so I could show y'all what's what. Knicks and Spurs tipping off at 12 o'clock noon, man. I love that Christmas Day game. As usual, you guys already know where to find us afterwards. That's the number one show for the fans by the fans, because Christmas or not, I'm in here tapping in with the people, man. We do a quick Christmas post-game show. I won't be on for too long. It's not going to be like a regular show, but you guys know that I've been on with me over the past couple of years. It is like a tradition when it comes to the Christmas Day game. So I do like to come on at least for a couple minutes and give my reaction to what happened there. Okay, all right. So let me show you what went down last night on Underdog. So those of you that follow me on Instagram or follow the KFTV on Instagram, I did my picks as I was walking to the garden, and I'll let you guys know, man, the 3 picks that I really love in last night's action. It was Karl-Anthony Towns with higher than 23.5 points against the Toronto Raptors. Remember, on Underdog, you pick between 2 to 8 players, and you're just going to predict whether or not they go higher or lower than the stat number that Underdog has. So last night's number for Karl-Anthony Towns was 23.5. I went with higher. The Raptors had no answer for him at the center position, and I figured that was going to be a feast for him. He finished with 31. I had R.J. Barrett in that same game higher than 21.5 points. I thought R.J., with that Raptors offense, him commanding so much usage in there and returning to the Garden, I thought that number that Underdog had, which was 21.5 points, I thought that number was rather low. And so I took R.J. with the higher number there, and he finished with 23. So I got that. And then Wemby, as we just talked about with our guy Noah, Victor Wembanyama has been on a heater. He's averaged 33 points per game against the 76ers in their 2 games last year. And so I went with higher than 23.5 points. He finished with 26 points, even as he struggled in that game, and the Spurs still lost. So all in all, on this one, I put $20 up, 3 picks, and that netted out 5 times the number. So I got $112 off of that. Did win $200 on my last ticket as well. And so let's pick some for this Christmas tilt. And as I said, man, you can pick between NBA, NFL, whatever is on schedule. So for the Knicks versus Spurs game, here's where I'm going to go. I told you, man, I'm going back to my guy, the big bodega. The Spurs right now do not defend centers well. I could give you it right now. They give up on average 24 points per game to opposing centers and 14.8 rebounds to opposing centers. I'm going big bodega, a Merry Christmas, and I'm going 40.5, higher than 40.5 points, rebounds, and assists. So I'm going to go with that number there for the big bodega, Karl-Anthony Towns. For Wemby, I'm riding the hot hand, man. He is the #1 scoring threat for the San Antonio Spurs. I don't see how, if he's going to be shooting the ball well, then the Knicks have no deterrence. Now, they may be able to deter him from the paint if you have a guy like an OG or a Towns on him that's going to be, a bit stronger. But right now, Wemby's just a little bit too good offensively there. And I think even though the Knicks will win, I think he will have a good game. And I'm going with higher than 24.5 points for Victor Wembanyama. So there that goes. What else? Where else do we want to go here? You can go a number of ways here. All you have to do is pick 2 players. But I'll go a third here. And I'll see. Let's see what the Brunson number looks like on this matchup. As we talked about, the Spurs do not cover opposing point guards very well. 23.5 for JB. I kind of like that. But there's a number of stats that you can go through. It's not just points. I like to play points, rebounds, and assists, but there's a number of things you can look at. First quarter points, assists, 3.5 rebounds, and assists. 3-pointers made. You can do all of those. So I'm gonna go back to the point number here, and even though you're gonna net out lower in terms of payout, I'm still gonna go with that as a safe pick. And then on this side, you put your wager amount in. I do my usual 20, man. You don't gotta put your whole shirt on the line. You don't gotta put your house on the line there. I put $20 in there. Now you have the option on Underdog between standard payout and flex. The difference is on a standard payout, the 3 picks I selected all have to hit for me to get the 5 times my money. You can go flex, where if you get 2 out of the 3 right, you'll basically get your $20. Or if you get all 3 right on the flex play, you'll get half that you would get on the standard. So it's a way to kind of hedge your position there if you choose to. So I'll go with the standard again because I feel good about these picks. And then that's it, man. You pretty much submit and you're good to go. Underdog also has the daily fantasy drafts that you can play. And we're going to get that started with with Team KFTV. So you have that. And they also have a number of promotions. They're going to have a number of promotions for the Christmas Day games as well. So make sure you guys tap into that. I think they got like some sort of like $1 million contest on the Christmas Day game. So there that is. So I'm going to put this ticket in here. Confirm that. Lock that up. And that's that, man. That's that. I might play another ticket for the football games. We'll see where we go there. And there it is. Salute to everybody in the chat. Hope you guys enjoy your Christmas Eve. Or your Knicksmas, rather. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's show, man. Salute to everybody in the chat. Thanks for tuning in. Let me shout out the Super Chats. NY2PA, $10 Super Chat. Thank you. Definitely appreciate the love. Beeman Boy 81, welcome to the franchise channel members. My people on IG, hey, you know where to find us, man. Come over to the YouTube side. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Facebook, Twitter. Salute to you guys as well, man. Hey, man, see you guys tomorrow for post-game. Enjoy your night. Enjoy the family. CP the franchise. I'm out of here. Peace.